This video contains major spoilers for Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Snake Eater has always been an incredible game, arguably the most consistent and best game in the series. It's sad though, both thematically, narratively, but also in real life. In spite of that sadness though, I couldn't help but thoroughly enjoy every moment of this 21-year-old PS2 game. It serves as a beacon of the stealth action genre and has one of the most engaging stories in any game I've ever played. I'm Ouroboros, and this is my review of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. For the uninitiated, Delta is a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, a game that, contrary to the title, takes place at the very beginning of the Metal Gear timeline. We follow Snake. Nope, not the Snake that's in Smash. Nope, not that one either. Nope, still not that one. Okay, this is Naked Snake, and he's not actually naked. Okay, well, kind of. He's supposed to be sneaking into Soviet territory during the Cold War to rescue a nuclear weapons scientist. He's naked because he's not supposed to be leaving any trace of his infiltration. It's a stealth game, after all. After a brief meeting with Sokolov, you make your way out of the Soviet jungle and have a surprise meetup with the boss, Snake's old mentor. She's defecting to the Soviet Union, taking Sokolov with her, and giving her new comrades a couple of nukes as a nice welcoming present. Personally, I would also prefer portable thermonuclear warheads as opposed to a nice bottle of wine whenever I throw parties, but you know, kids these days. After a less than heart-touching reunion, the boss's new commander, Colonel Volgin, decides to test out his new little toy and fires one of the warheads at a Soviet research facility. Khrushchev demands answers from the US government, and so you attempt to rectify your miserable failures by returning to the jungles of Selinoyarsk for Operation Snake Eater. While your objective remains the same, to rescue Sokolov and destroy his research, a new criteria must be met: kill the boss. Snake Eater is a really cinematic game. That's kind of what you get into when you jump into a Metal Gear Solid game. The series director, Hideo Kojima, is a massive film buff, and his love for that medium is incredibly apparent in his works. With that being said, the opening is just so cool. There are so many moments in this game where I'm not gonna be very articulate. It just gives you that boyish sense of awesomeness, and it really lets out your inner child. And I don't even care. There's plenty of moments in this game that are really thought-provoking and artistic, and then there are moments that are just straight out of a Bond movie. I'm also pretty sure they reuse a ton of assets from the original game, like with all the old TV footage or some of the black and white photos. The first-person view is a great extra that you can frequently use throughout the game's many cutscenes. You can even hear Snake's breathing through his mask during the initial Halo jump before the Virtuous mission. These are all small additions, but they add up to more than the sum of their parts. You spend a massive amount of time watching cutscenes, whether it's to get backstory for a character or to set up various characters and or organizations that become integral to the series moving forward. Giving the player something interesting to look forward to makes it feel more engaging. Less like you're sitting down and watching a movie, and more like playing a movie-game hybrid. And surprisingly, none of the cutscenes are pre-rendered. Everything is done in-engine. I love when a game does this. It gives a sense of consistency between the gameplay and the cutscenes, but is also great because your gear will carry over into the cutscene. The new models also just look incredible. I particularly love the glow up that the boss got. I always thought the old ones just looked a little off. I know they were on the PS2, but something just didn't look right about them, especially the way their mouths moved. But here, not only are the models and lighting amazing, but the lip syncing for English is next level. I seriously can't praise the visual upgrades enough. Performance issues aside, MGS Delta is a stunning game. I know I don't play many of the big, graphically intensive modern AAA titles, but this is by far the most visually stunning game I've ever played, at least in terms of realistic graphics. I know a lot of people have complained about the performance, especially on lower hardware. I don't know if that's a product of Konami being Konami, or because the Unreal Engine 5 has kind of been notoriously unstable, but I really enjoyed the visual aspects of this game. Although it's weird it wasn't developed using the Fox engine. I know it's old tech, but the Phantom Pain ran phenomenal even on old hardware for the time. I'd love to see what a modern game could do using it. But back on track, the Virtuous mission is here to do a few things. First, set up the stakes. The Fox unit will be disbanded if Operation Snake Eater fails, Snake and Zero will be executed, and the world will probably fall into nuclear disarray. So, yeah, things aren't looking too good for our boys. But really, I found the most interesting part of this opening was to establish the relationship between the boss and Snake. It's very different from every other on-screen relationship I've ever seen, video game or not. It's not romantic, it's not a parent and child, it's not really a mentor and student. It's a very unique dynamic, and we get hints to this immediately when she's introduced. The music shifts when she's introduced in her first codec call, and Snake's demeanor instantly shifts. There's more to these two, which we will see later. That early introduction and continual development is what makes these two so engaging to watch together. We're also introduced to Revolver Ocelot. He's so extra, his mannerisms are so unique and lovable, and the meow is certainly a choice. This is what you get with a Kojima game. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. Love him or hate him, you gotta respect the man for sticking to his guns. And much like seeing the boss and Snake interact, I also enjoyed Snake and Ocelot's blossoming relationship throughout Snake Eater. It's also a complicated one, but more of a rivalry type of deal. When it seems like everything is going to plan, we get to the bridge, one of the best executed scenes in the game. It's the start of all the supernatural stuff, the introduction to Volgan, the introduction to Eva, the origin of the iconic bandana, the beginnings of Snake versus the boss with CQC, the eventual detonation of the nuclear missile. The ending of the Virtuous mission is a miserable failure for the characters, but my god is it entertaining to watch. Once we finally get into Operation Snake Eater, the first person we encounter is actually the boss. I've always loved having consistent interactions with antagonists in games, whether it's in cutscenes like this, small fights before the final confrontation, or even scripted battles where you lose. It makes them feel so much more menacing. The boss always had this cold, calculating, and controlled demeanor. We saw that in the codec call, we saw that on the bridge, and we see that again here. And she repeats what becomes the philosophical foundation for the entire game: loyalty to the end. It's a repeated dilemma that Snake struggles with. Having to kill your mentor for the sake of your country isn't a burden any of us will ever have to bear, and she is leagues above him. I mean, she didn't even have to raise her gun at him to take him down multiple times and dismantle his gun. We also see this issue pop up with Granin. He wants to help you out of spite, but would never defect or betray his country. He loves the motherland too much. Another thing I appreciate is that Snake Eater does have a unique take on the traditional military story. We don't often see women in games, especially military-related games, who have such a strong presence as the boss. And even when we do get more sexualized characters like Eva, it's for a purpose. And it's not like Eva isn't a badass anyway. She takes out basically an entire Ocelot unit on her own with nothing but a pistol, and is only subdued by Ocelot himself. These two characters kind of take diverging paths when you look at handling strong women in games. It doesn't really matter what gender the boss is. She's a soldier who happens to be a woman, and that gender doesn't really have any impact on her character. She could have been a man, and it wouldn't have changed the narrative. On the other hand, Eva uses her sexuality as a weapon against both Volgan and Snake, and comes out on top. She exploits the weaknesses of men around her to get what she wants, but is still someone who is more than capable in combat. It's definitely a far cry from Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5. At this point, you've kind of been overloaded with cutscenes and dialogue, so the game gives you a big chunk of gameplay. Sure, you still have cutscenes here and there, but it mostly gives you room to play around with all the different stealth mechanics. Snake Eater's narrative ebbs and flows like that. You'll have long sections of tense gameplay, followed by more subdued cutscenes, or you'll have long chunks of story and then long chunks of stealth action. Whenever you're starting to get bored of something, it moves you on to the next part. For example, after dealing with all of the stealth sections, fighting the pain and the end, you're given a moment of rest. You're given a moment to collect yourself and reflect. Not only on the journey to get you to Groznygrad, but the journey ahead. To accomplish this, Kojima gave us one of the most iconic moments in the entire series, the ladder climb. This is about a minute and a half of you just climbing up a ladder, which in hindsight is really unsafe. I mean, seriously, who the hell made this thing and why does it go so high? This is your moment to compose yourself and just listen to the vocals. I remember when I watched the announcement video for this game, the top comment was about being excited to climb a ladder again. Games don't often have these really bold and outlandish ideas, and I loved experiencing it yet again. I know it's ironic saying that climbing a ladder is bold, but if you've played the game, you know what I mean. It's almost like the elevator scene in Ava when the camera just sits there, waiting. It's fantastic pacing.
I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater.
And after all of that, you end up getting captured and tortured. I know it's weird to say that I enjoyed a torture scene, but it's really memorable, especially on repeat playthroughs. Volgin is trying to get information out of Snake, but Snake is literally the only person in the room who isn't double-crossing Volgin. He's also the person in the room who has the least amount of information that Volgin needs. He's just a dude trying to destroy the Shagohod and kill the boss. But being completely blind and seeing Snake's health slowly drain at the beginning of the sequence is really brilliant. Almost like Kojima was throwing us into the shoes of him being blindfolded without, you know, all the pain and suffering. When you can actually see in the cutscenes, the camera work is incredible. You can clearly see Kojima's love for movies with all the different techniques they use. This is also one of the many times when you can go into first-person mode and catch a glimpse of the Sorrow. This time he shows you the radio frequency you need to use to escape your prison cell. He pops up a lot, especially in scenes with the boss, so this really shouldn't have been your first time seeing him. It's like he knows the boss is secretly trying to help you and is together with her. I really enjoyed seeing Volgin be afraid of the boss. She's the only one standing while Volgin, Snake, and Sokolov are writhing on the floor. However, this is the furthest we've seen Snake get when facing off against her. He manages to hold his own, but does eventually fail. The boss is clearly shaken up when she leaves Snake with Volgin. I don't want to say this is the first time we've seen her have conflicting feelings for her mission, but this is the most she's let her emotions show. Granted, she does that in front of Ocelot, who is also working for the US, but still. She's usually so stoic and poised, this is the first time she's let that mask slip. So you make your way out of the prison, you meet up with Eva, plant the explosive to destroy the Shagohod, and make your daring escape. The last act of Snake Eater is so much fun. There's just so much diversity in the gameplay between the stealth sections in the hangar, the Volgin fight, the escape sequence. I know the bike ride is semi-scripted, more like an on-rails section, but it's so much fun and really feels like it was ripped straight out of a Bond or Jason Bourne movie. But that's not the highlight of the last act for me. No, like everyone else, It comes down to the ending. The ending that still makes me tear up like a little baby. After finally besting your teacher, you're forced to kill her. You sit there in the field of pristine white flowers as she lays on the ground, begging you to kill her. And you have to pull the trigger. You have to be the one to end her life. It's so hard to not just sit there, thinking, praying that there's another way out of this, wondering why the boss did all of this. Why is she giving you the legacy? Wondering why she uses a patriot, and then the flowers turn blood red, her horse arrives, and you just walk away. It's heartbreaking. And at this point, it shouldn't be. You don't know that she wasn't a defector. You don't know any of her story. You just know that she was your teacher. And then the debriefing. Oh God, the debriefing. Seeing Snake slowly place the same flowers and patriot onto her grave, her unnamed grave, I can't even begin to describe it. I'm struggling to even know how to communicate that dread, that agony. It's one of the most agonizing and torturous deaths in any game I've ever played. Eva's monologue and the music swelling, Snake's salute, it's perfect.
Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot.
And just for reference, I had to go back and watch this scene because it's, again, perfect. Now I'm an emotional mess and I need to take a break from writing this script. But now that I'm back, a few days later, let's talk about the gameplay. I've always thought that the stealth genre is one that's really underexplored. Yeah, we've got some fantastic franchises, but the quantity of those franchises is really minimal compared to more mainstream stuff. The last Metal Gear game I played was 5, nearly 10 years ago. And while I adored that game for its creativity, depth, and freedom it provided, I love Snake Eater for very different reasons. Its level design is incredibly linear, which might sound bad for modern standards when everything is super open world, but I find that it makes for more tightly designed enemy encounters, while simultaneously not necessarily forcing you into one playstyle. I mean, sure, a ton of early game areas kind of force you to get from point A to point B in a certain way, but especially once you get to Groznygrad, you're given a lot of freedom in getting to the next checkpoint. I do wish that the camo system was more fleshed out. It feels really shallow because you basically just go into your menu and click on the option with the highest number. There's not much to it. I mean, there are a few camos that give you bonus effects, but it doesn't really change my opinion of it all that much. The wound and health system falls into this camp to a lesser degree. You have to learn which items cure which ailments. It's not super hard to figure out, but the game is completely fine with letting you waste valuable resources if you don't know what you're doing. This was a bit of a nice change of pace for me. So many games either use a health regeneration system or classic health pickups / healing items. This seems like a nice mix of the two without diluting either system. Still, I wish it were a little more fleshed out. The food you can get basically everywhere is mostly that. Food, it's there for subsistence. All of these mechanics do combine to culminate in an interesting experience. Snake Eater differs from its predecessors and even successors in its setting, and I feel that while some are underexplored, the survival mechanics add to it. In terms of actual stealth action, I found that Delta is simultaneously still incredibly engaging, but also weighed down by the original game. On one hand, it's incredibly satisfying to manipulate the AI, that's all stealth games are. Every enemy acts and reacts very predictably. It's that consistent behavior that makes these types of games so much fun to master. For example, you can throw empty magazines near enemies and they will go investigate it. You can then go over and use CQC to knock them out, or you can hide behind cover and knock. A guard will come over and you can either sneak past them or knock them out. There are dozens of repeatable actions that you can take to effectively and efficiently take out enemies, and the linear level design enhances this. However, I found small details to be really clunky. For example, it's really hard to turn the opposite direction on some pieces of cover. You either have to leave cover and then re-enter facing the opposite direction, or there are some cases, like the fight with the Fury, where you literally aren't allowed to face a direction behind a wall. Like the game just won't let you do it. Or how it's basically impossible to consistently CQC enemies while remaining in cover. Or how about how it literally won't let you CQC enemies if you have the wrong weapon equipped. There are just so many minor quirks about the combat that it can really make unforced errors super common. Like, there's literally no reason why I can't knock, lure an enemy over, and then just CQC them while I'm in cover. For some reason, it just doesn't always work. That inconsistency is wildly frustrating because, like I said earlier, the enemies react so predictably. So, in your mind, you know exactly how you want an encounter to play out, but the game refuses to let you play out your ideas. Compare it to the Phantom Pain, and it becomes painfully obvious why that game was so highly praised. Where 5 was all about the game saying yes to every one of your crazy ideas, Delta is all about saying, maybe. I thought that's what the game was gonna let me do when it asked if I wanted to play in the new style when I started the game, but it didn't make a difference. I know the game wasn't originally designed with these gameplay mechanics in mind, but it's a massive missed opportunity to not update the gameplay. They could have even given us an option for either one. A version with the original Snake Eater mechanics, and one with the updated Phantom Pain mechanics. That does lead into an interesting discussion about how exactly developers should approach remakes. Delta is a purely faithful remake for better or worse. It's essentially the original Snake Eater with a new coat of paint. I mean, there's a warning on startups saying that some things haven't aged well, like the blackface that's not even actually blackface, or the boss saying that she doesn't think the US and Russia will be enemies in the 21st century. Yeah, the second one really didn't age well. Granted, at the time the game came out, the US and Russia were on better terms than we are now, but it's funny and also appropriate looking back. Her whole spiel at that point was about enemies changing with the times, and here we are, still with the same issues the boss was pointing out back in the 60s. Regardless, I think the game has actually aged really well, and I have enough media literacy to know that someone using black face paint to blend in with his surroundings while infiltrating an enemy base is not the same thing as someone painting their face black and making monkey noises to mock a minority. But hey, that's just me. Regardless, I can respect how this game remade Snake Eater, even though I envision some changes. These are mostly differences in opinion, so I can accept the lack of Phantom Pain mechanics. But where the game far outshines its successors is its boss fights. I think it's pretty unanimous that Snake Eater has some of, if not the best bosses in the series. The Cobra unit is both an incredibly interesting group from a character and boss standpoint. They all have their own unique personalities, and some of the fights are straight up iconic. One of my favorites is definitely the end. It's a long fight. I mean, it's been a hot minute since I've played this game, and I'm kind of trash at it, but it still took me a good 30 minutes from start to finish. And that's not including all the times I died, or when he sent me all the way back to the prison cell and I had to walk my sorry ass all the way back to the boss arena. I know in production, Kojima wanted this thing to take like a whole week to beat, and of course the developers were all like, hell no, that's psycho, so thankfully we didn't get anything that crazy, but it's still a very mentally draining fight. There are times when you get a glimpse of his scope just before he fires, and holy jump scare. Those moments got me. He does have a lot of audio cues to clue you into where he's hiding, and you can of course cheese the fight if you know what you're doing. There's a point when you can kill him before the fight even starts. If you wait long enough, the dude will also literally die of old age. I didn't do either of these little Easter eggs because I wanted to, actually enjoy the fight. but is there for people who find them. His little bird friend also shows up in the cutscene as a spirit if you kill him, which I did because I wanted to see if I actually could. There's so many fun little Easter eggs and details throughout the game that make it so enjoyable to play on first time and repeat playthroughs. I will say there were a lot of times, like before and during the pain fight, where I had to crank up the brightness because I literally couldn't see anything in front of me. It was mostly only in really dark areas like caves, but I still found that to be annoying. Yeah, I get that it works well in the Fury fight, like he's supposed to light up the area with his flamethrower. It's a really cool idea, but when that's interfering with my ability to move, you have to make some compromises. The Sorrow is also a good fight, if you even want to call it that. All of the other Cobras are fantastic in their own right to fight. The Sorrow is amazing with terrifying jump scares and scales with how poor your stealth performance is. The Fear is freaky and all sorts of the perfect amount of weird. Volgan is a fantastic mix of CQC and bullet hell survival. The Shagohod run is great, except it's kind of easy, especially in the last phase, which is a bummer because all of the other bosses felt like home runs. But of course, we couldn't talk about bosses without talking about the boss. She stands out so much from the rest of the cast because of how simple she is. There's no supernatural nonsense, there's no music, there's no fancy arena shenanigans. It's just you and her. CQC and firearms. It's a no-nonsense fight. You're a soldier, and you're here to finish your mission. It's hard to know what exactly Delta means for the series moving forward. Will it still progress without Kojima's input? Will Konami put in more effort now that they're back into it? Or will they stick to remakes? We don't really know. All I know is that I have to judge Delta by what they've given us today. I've always enjoyed all the fun little tidbits in Kojima's games. From the movie talks with Paramedic when you save, to the plethora of extras like Snake vs. Monkeys or Guy's Savage, to the goofiness of Sokolov trying to sneak out with Snake. They make sitting through and basically playing a movie that much more entertaining. Snake Eater is inherently a game tied to its historical setting, and I found sneaking through the Russian jungle, which is apparently a thing, engaging and rewarding, but only some of the time. It's only when the game allows me to do what I want that I find Delta shining the most. The rest is really frustrating. It felt about 50-50 with whether or not I'd get spotted because sometimes it just didn't do what I wanted it to. Fortunately, when the times that you don't have to worry about stealth, like the bosses and the final chase sequence, those are all incredible. Even in the times when the performance drops, like how it stutters during certain cutscenes for some reason, I find myself accepting Delta's flaws because of how incredibly well written the story is. Even all these years later, I still can't help but get emotional over the final debriefing. I can't help but smile at Ocelot being extra, twirling his guns like an idiot. I can't help but enjoy the quiet moment of reflection at the ladder climb. Metal Gear Solid Delta is a tragic remake, both because of Kojima's relationship with the series and Konami, and because of the tragedy of the boss. Thanks for watching.
Yes, it appears that no one knew that I was Adam. Of course, I am always at the CIA's disposal, Mr. Director.